All right, we're recording. Okay, how are you doing?
Well, I think I was able to last time pinpoint that this all goes back to the relationship with my mother in my childhood, and it's I started thinking about, I just started thinking about, or allowing myself to think about, my relationship with my mom in my childhood, and so I started remembering, what it was like back then, and I just kind of fell apart.
You fell apart because you felt what? Did you feel sorry for yourself? Did you feel sad? What were you feeling about it?
I just remember the painful relationship that we had, and I just started feeling really sad, and just
you wish it was different.
I just remember just wishing that I could just remembering just everything, just how I used to hide. I just hide from the whole world, and the only thing that gave me comfort was food.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me a relief, because I wasn't really comfortable anywhere. I wasn't comfortable at home. I wasn't comfortable at school. I felt a lot of shame around my eating, and I felt a lot of anger and rage at my mom, and I also felt I loved her very much at the same time, and so I also felt inadequate, and like a really just like a shitty daughter. And because there were some things I did to my mom that were, that I feel guilty about, and
do you see in hindsight you really didn't know any different, couldn't have done any different, based on where you were at emotionally and how you felt too as a victim? Because I think you've taken that anger and rage component to it too. You just were a child. You didn't have any way to express yourself. Plus, you didn't have access to expressing it to a different person. You had no way to express what was going on.
Yeah, and so I finally came to the conclusion that, it doesn't matter if I was a shitty daughter and that she was,
a shitty mom
or anything.
Exactly. You both did what you thought was the right thing to do for whatever reason, right?
Well, it's over too. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. I can't go back to her. I can't.
Do you think if she knew if you could fully express yourself, fully
well, that's one thing. I never had, for whatever reason, the courage or whatever, or I tried once and it didn't work. I never really was completely honest with her, because, regardless of, I was never completely honest with her because I was afraid of her reaction.
Well, because you had a perspective about it or a perception about it that was not good for her. It was negative, right?
Yeah, and I can see how she thought that she was, doing everything right, and I was just being a brat, or being, this horrible child that didn't do what she said, because she was, she really thought that it was me.
Well, she didn't have any understanding of your own thoughts and feelings. Because you didn't express them.
Yeah, or I didn't express them.
So she's just
the right way.
The right way, or you didn't really probably know what you were feeling inside yourself either. How do you express something you don't fully grasp or understand either, right?
Yeah. So,
do you feel like it's forgivable, all of it?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it has to be. At some point, it has to be. I can't. When I start thinking about it, I just start crying, and I'm not a person that cries.
Well, that's because you've been denying, repressing, suppressing, avoiding, right? So maybe you need to go in and ask if it's all forgivable. When do you just say, you know what, this was a big fucking failure?
Yeah.
And you know what? If I could go back and she could go back, we both would do it different.
Yeah.
So is it forgivable?
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Well, I'm saying it. I'm not feeling it yet.
Okay, well, I want you to feel it. Let's ask the question. When I ask the question, I don't want you to just answer. I want you to feel the question. Can you look back and ask yourself, is it forgivable? And I'm asking you if it's forgivable to you. If it's not forgivable, can you recover from it?
I don't know if it's forgivable because I'm not there yet.
That's okay.
I feel like it should be.
Well, so if it is, I'm not asking if it is forgivable. That means that mistakes were made and it wasn't, everybody involved thought they were doing the right thing. Maybe they didn't know the long-term consequences, or that they couldn't express themselves, or whatever. If it's not forgivable, guess who will never get over it? Because then what's happening is you've identified by that story. This is very similar to someone being molested by their parent for their entire childhood. Okay? Which I've had those clients, and they've totally gotten over it and forgiven it. And it is forgivable. How do they come to that? How do you come to forgiveness? And what are you forgiving? I mean, I want you to really open yourself up to this. This is what the work is about. If you want to recover, how are you going to do that if you don't do the work?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm forgiving. There's just so much there. It's like, there's so many different little...
You don't need to pick it apart. The whole thing is sucky. Just say the whole thing sucks. Do I have to really pick it apart and go, well, that's one moment and that one moment? Well, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm a victim.
I don't think I can can forgive it like one moment. It's like...
No, you have to contemplate. Yeah, and that's what I'm doing with you right now. Is you got to contemplate it. You have to actually go into opening your mind to see it from a different context or a different viewpoint. That's the only way to change it, because right now you only have your view of it, right?
Right. And
your childhood is a child's view of it, so it's very ignorant. It's naive. It's not aware. It's child.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's important too, to go, well, when I experienced this, I was a only child, child with no other comparisons in any way. I had this one point of view, and that's all I had. And if I believe that thought and believe that assumption, my behavior from there is going to be somewhat predictable.
Well, it's not just forgiving. It's forgiving. It's forgiving everything. It's forgiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All
of it. It's like I said. You said there's so many things. I'm like, yeah, the whole thing, not just this and this and this. And if you got to go back and nitpick everything, my God, you'll never recover. Right? You just got to see it for what it is. Your mother may not have been emotionally equipped to have a child. I don't know if you knew this, but maybe she was autistic. Maybe she was special needs. She might have been intelligent, right? But she clearly had her own emotional immaturity and issues. And on top of that, you didn't have...
I can't hear you.
I'm right here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
I said on top of that, you probably had your own issues, let alone the person who was your mother was mentally ill or, retarded.
She wasn't retarded. She was just...
No, it is. It's called an emotional retardation. She was. She couldn't handle it. She didn't know how to process things. You can look at that and go, oh, there's more than just one physical form of, or one form of, special needs. You can have physical special needs. You can have intellectual limitations. And many people have emotional limitations, right? And so when someone is in their own emotional limitation, how can you raise a child? How do you do it? When you're stuck in your own survival mode, right? It's very, very complicated. And the child that's involved in that environment is going to have her own complications because of it, right?
Yeah.
It's chaos. It's chaos. It's hard to pinpoint, when someone's... So you got to look at it all and look at the context. If you could take yourself out of it, if someone could say, here's your mom's situation. There is not one point in her relationship with you she could have functioned the way that you thought she should have. That was way out of her scope of ability. You witnessed other parents, right? And they seemed normal. Am I wrong?
I didn't witness a lot of parents.
Yeah. So you never really had a comparison, say, well, they got this and they're this way. How come it's this way for me? You never really had that?
No.
Don't worry about it. Either way.
I think, there were other kids friends that had probably worse childhoods than mine.
Yeah, it's all relative to your perception, however. You know what I mean? Like, to you.
Well, I know that I kept thinking, that was one of my issues was because why I felt like, because my mom was a counselor, so she counseled, like she had some children that
she helped.
That were like from just horror, had suffered horrible abuse. So when I would complain, she would just laugh at me, because she was dealing with these.
So you were. So you were dismissed. She dismissed it.
Yeah, and then I felt like I was. So I just internalized everything. So I feel like what I was feeling was, important because, there were so many other.
Did you ever resent? Did you ever resent these other kids that were getting help?
No.
Or resent your mom?
No. I just resented my mom. I just felt like, I just felt like I had the wrong mother. When I was really small, we were really close, and then it just seemed like when I became overweight and started to diet, that's when everything started falling apart. And it just got worse and worse and worse because in her mind, she was doing everything she could to help me, and I was being disobedient. So when I used to steal food from her purse, and so
she put you on a diet. How old were you when she put you on your first diet?
Like between 7 and 10, I can't remember.
Got it. Okay, you were. It was prior to puberty. So okay, so here's the shift that has to happen, and I don't think we need to nitpick this apart. I think what you've got to be able to do is resolve your resentment. You need to surrender the narcissism involved with what you think she should be as a mother and how she should have been and how she, you have a concept of what you think she should be like or should have been like. So when you say she wasn't my mother, she shouldn't have been my mom. She's not my mom. Well, what if that is what a mom is? At least what gives you that concept? Like
when we went out to breakfast every morning, and people like together and have a coffee or whatever. She said, "That's your mom?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, I thought that was your social worker." Because we were so disconnected from each other, people didn't think that we were
actually hanging
related.
out.
And so that's what I mean. Like, at some point, we just became so disconnected. It wasn't like we were.
Well, and you hated her. You literally hated her.
I wouldn't say I hated her. I just wanted to get away because I felt like she hated me. I think she was. I remember writing that in my journal and finding it like years later.
I'm going to say this again, and I want you to just sit with it. And if any of it is true, you need to just say it. You hated her. I know that sounds really harsh, but really on the other side of hate is what?
Love.
You got it. And so when I say that, I'm like, you did hate her. You just went in denial. There had to have been a part of you, maybe not now. I'm not now, but back then, was there ever, because you said there's all this rage and anger, and there was a part of you that hated her. That might have been why you were so defiant, because you basically didn't want to give her any. You guys became incredibly toxic. Clearly, it was toxic, right? What if you found out she didn't hate you at all? She just didn't know how to. She didn't know how to. You were her child. She knew how to help other children. But when it came to her in her own bubble, she couldn't function. It didn't work the same way in her brain.
So now I just felt it was like I hated her, but then she would do something really nice. And then I would feel horrible, and it was like I used to lock myself in my room so that I could eat. Like I would go to the store, I would steal candy, I would come home and I would tell my mom I was going in my room and I didn't want to be disturbed.
Yeah.
And I would go in there and I would eat.
Yeah, how much of your eating was as a weapon against her? How much of your eating was to hurt her?
I don't think any of it was to hurt her. I think I did it to punish myself.
Resent. There's resent.
But I don't think I ever ate out of resentment.
Okay.
I was too vain for that. I would do it to punish myself. Like I would eat more and punish myself after eating, because I had to do a lot of lying in order to get to eat, and stealing. I had to steal from. I would have to go to the store.
And
steal
you,
it,
yeah.
steal it from her purse.
God, and you felt bad. Yeah, and you felt really bad about it. So you're like, if I'm going to do that, I should eat it all.
Yeah, and then I would punish myself with more food.
You see how that has nothing to do with the food?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the food. You're not eating because of the food. It doesn't take. It's not because it tastes good. It's for these reasons.
She was trying to. I think she. At one point, I think when I was around 10, she went back to school to she was doing her dissertation, and on, I forget what it was on, but she, and trying to do that and deal with me was really difficult for her.
Yeah, because she couldn't figure her own situation out. Book knowledge doesn't necessarily translate into reality.
Well, that I mean, the time, like she needed, like we were supposed to go somewhere, and she had to finish. She had a deadline she had to meet, and she couldn't. She finally ended up quitting, and I feel like she felt like she couldn't do it because she had to take care of me, and she kind of resented that because she really wanted to get her PhD in whatever it was, and she never got it. So I don't, and then there's I was born in Ohio, and we moved to North Carolina when I was 5, and back to her where she was raised, where her parents lived. And this was after she divorced my dad. And she told me, I think one of the first things she told me was that was not to change the way that I spoke, because I did at that point I didn't have a Southern accent, and my mother didn't have a Southern accent. I don't know how you get out of that place without an accent. Anyway, and so that was, and so when I started like speaking, I mean, it just everything about me just got on her nerves. Like I was overweight. I was starting to sound like redneck. And I started to,
it started making her feel. Yeah, she had special needs for sure.
But and she wanted, my mom was so different from me. She came from a really not really wealthy, but she came from a she had, my grandparents had money, and she went to school. She went to Europe for like 2 years after high school, and then she went to school at some really nice college, and then she went and got a master's degree. And I quit school in my senior year because I gained so much weight in that summer before I was too embarrassed. So she has a child that just completely embarrassed her, and
she didn't know what to do. It sounds like she didn't know how to connect with you at the heart level. That's what I'm hearing, is she really didn't understand or connect from the heart with you.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean she didn't love you. Didn't mean she didn't want to. It just she didn't know how to do it. And so when you started showing and having manifestation of these issues, she clearly didn't. Again, book knowledge is intellect. That doesn't translate to heart knowledge. Right? And so she probably had some idea of what she was supposed to know. And here it is. I'm having a daughter who is having this codependent relationship with me, clearly struggling. And she's putting you on a diet. She has no idea how that's going to impact your psychological relationship with food. And you know what? It was way out of her scope of awareness as a mother. Just imagine what you would do. You wouldn't know. Would you know what to do? No, because you would. But do you agree? If you had a daughter, wouldn't you want to connect with her at the heart level? You love this person. Yeah. You can go beyond that. She didn't know how to do that. That tells me she didn't know how to function that way with herself. She was probably really controlled. And she didn't know what to do. She was probably paralyzed. Not obviously not physically paralyzed, but she was paralyzed as a mother, did not know what to do. And your response to it was defiance. But you didn't know why you were doing that either. I mean, so keep in mind, she was just as clueless as you were. So is any of this forgivable?
Yeah.
You see that a little more clearly, like, well, there's no other way it could have happened. She was clueless. I was clueless. I couldn't talk. She wasn't available because she wouldn't have known what to do with what I was saying. It was like two dodo birds not knowing what to do. No, I don't know what to do. And you're like, I don't know what to do either. I'm going to go lock myself in my room and eat because that's the only thing that makes me feel like I got something going on. And the issues with food and weight, no one really questioned it back then. No one's really questioning it today, so you have to really look to it how maybe her issues around her own self-concept and the fact that she had maybe more of a hollow sense of herself too. I don't know, was she a sad person in general? Was she kind of an empty person? A lot of facade, a lot of cloaks, a lot of, order.
Yeah.
That's a sense I'm getting.
And she was always telling me to clean my room and always telling me to, clean something, and I never did, and I was just, I think it's, she was very, she would try to talk to me about her job, and I remember thinking, no, I'm not an adult, I don't know how to answer this question, and she didn't have, when we moved back to North Carolina, she didn't, in Ohio she had friends, but when we moved back, she didn't really have any friends, and,
is that when she poured herself into her education?
Yeah, and then her work, and she was also sick. She was diabetic. She was a brittle diabetic. So her illness progressed, and she became really sick, and she was really, really sick for probably from the time I was probably 13, and she was in the hospital for a couple months, and at one point, and then she got really sick. So, and I don't think she thought she was going to be around to see me grow up, really, because I remember she asked her relatives to take care of me if something happened to her. So, there was that, too.
Well, you must have been pretty lonely. Because you're raised by a single mom. That sounds like she had her, not only did she have her own physical issues and fears, but she just wasn't present. But she was present for dieting, right?
What?
But she was present for, like, dieting and enforcing food restrictions. No?
She put me in Weight Watchers, and that didn't work, so she stopped doing that. But she, and after that, I was just self-dieting, and she would say, she would say I couldn't have dessert. That was her thing. I could pretty much have regular food, but no dessert. And nothing in between meals.
Got it. So she really wasn't super strict with your food. She wasn't really controlling in that respect. That was you.
Well, I couldn't eat this. Like, she had cake in the refrigerator, so I couldn't have that. But I was thinking when she was in the shower.
Yes, I remember you telling me that. I'm talking like, okay, so I have clients whose parents, super crazy, label reading, complete and total controllingness around food, fear, shaming you around food. It doesn't sound like she was that way. It doesn't. I know that you have these specific moments where you would sneak things, and she would have that, but it doesn't sound like it's dominating you. You dominated yourself in terms of food and feeling shameful and bad about it and sneaking around with it.
I don't know. She got, if I got the food out of the freezer or the refrigerator and she discovered it, she would get really mad.
Yeah.
And when she worked on Saturdays for my grandfather, and she left me at home, and there was a store right below our house, so I would go and I would buy brownie mix, and I would come home and I would make the brownies and eat them.
And eat them before she got home. Yeah.
Before she got home.
Yeah. Okay, so she was pretty shaming about the food?
Yeah, well, I knew that I couldn't, there were certain foods that I was not allowed to have.
Yeah.
So I would sneak them, like candy, cake, anything sweet.
Yeah.
When we had our 3 meals a day, that would, have like a vegetable, or we ate out a lot too.
How old are you? When was this?
Which is all through
2000.
elementary school.
Like how old were you? Like when were you born?
I was born, what did you say?
When were you born?
1970. So.
Okay, so you were pretty much the same age I am. I was born in 1977. Got it. Okay. Not that any of this matters. I really want to get into what matters though. All this fine detail does not matter. It doesn't. Because we're not trying to place blame on anybody. We're not trying to say, oh, she was terrible, poor you. That's not our goal, right? Our goal isn't to sift through the evidence of what a bad mom she is and how deserved you are to eat your food. That's not the point, right?
Well, I know, like this weekend, when I was eating, when I had bought that whole bunch of food and put it in my refrigerator, I started, I was eating the way that I used to eat as a child. Like when I would sneak food, like I would sneak and I would get the cake and I would eat it and then I would put it away.
You're seeing the resemblance to when you feel that you shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be doing this. What happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we're talking about, you're like, I've been contemplating my mom in my childhood. It was a painful relationship. It brings you a ton of sadness. It brings you all those emotions that you have about your relationship with your mother.
Mm-hmm.
How can we get rid of those emotions? Besides repression and denial and hiding and running away from and, right? We don't need that, right? How can you resolve it?
So you're saying that I should forgive her and all this will go away.
Yeah. There's a lot that will change when you go through that route. Because I think a lot of that's going to be part of it. I'm not saying that's all of it. I think that's going to be really a pivotal shift for you, is going to go into the grace and the forgiveness around not just your mom, but how you responded to her, how you were as a child, how you coped, how little you actually knew, what little support you had, and you did what you could. And ultimately, if you stay in that state of mind, how are you going to get better?
Right, I'm not.
You're not. Exactly. So let's go into changing that state of mind to where you can look back at your childhood and feel love for your mother. Like incredible amounts of love for her. Just unconditional too. To just care for, not to care for her and not for you. It's to actually care for her for the sake of her and the sake of you. Because right now you're resenting her and you have these baggage with her and it's hurting you. It's not helping you to defend, to put her in that position. It's you've got a lot of unresolved emotions here that you're not opening yourself up to it. Right? If you found out that you're tell me this. Is there any situation where someone came to you and said, oh my God, you need to know this about your mother, that would change how you perceive her, how you identify her in your head? Because you put her in a box in your head. You've compartmentalized her in your head.
I don't know.
Yeah, because would you say you're totally disconnected from her?
Yeah, I was. I at the end, yeah.
Meaning disconnected, meaning she's nothing. There's nothing there. Here nor there.
Right.
It's not no sadness either. There's nothing.
No, there's a lot of sadness.
Okay, so you're super connected to her.
I just feel like.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Like all the, when she was sick and how I could have done things better and treated her better and not, if I had just been in a better place and I wasn't. And I can't do anything about that. She's gone now.
No, and so, you couldn't have. You can say you should have, but could you have? Under the circumstance?
No, I mean, I remember when she died, I was like, I did the best I could. Cause I remember when she got really sick and she wanted me to leave. She wanted me to move out of the house, and I told her that I wasn't going to do that. And because there was no way I was going to let my mother die, alone. Which is probably what she wanted, but I would have never forgiven myself if I had just left her there. And so I didn't, and I was there until she died. And I remember telling her, I kept telling her that I loved her because I wanted to, at least I wanted her to know that,
Mm-hmm. And that was probably from your heart. That was heartfelt.
So
when you said that, it's heartfelt.
What?
When you said that to her, when you told her that you loved her, that was heartfelt.
I hope so. I mean,
well, you would know. You would feel it. You would feel it when you tell her. You would feel, I want her to know how much I love her. I love her.
I hope so. I don't remember.
You would know.
I mean,
yeah. So maybe you were just saying it. It wasn't heartfelt. You were just saying it. Words. I should say that. That's what I should say. That's what people say when someone else dies. They say, I love you. Was it that?
Well, it was more than once because at that point she was in a nursing home, and so I went to see her. She was always mad. she was always mad at me, and I remember one time I told her, I was like, Mom, I'm doing the best I can, and I started crying, and she started patting me on the arm. And because there's nothing I did to please her, and she was just mad all the time. But she loved that nursing home. I don't know if it was because she was away from me, or if she didn't have any responsibility. But I mean, when she died, like 2 of the nurses from the nursing home came to her funeral, and because they cared about her. Because a lot of people thought she was the sweetest woman on earth, and
what if she was? What if she was?
Well, she was.
What if she was? What would that do? What would come up if you found out this is the truth of the woman that was your mother? Here's the truth. She is the sweetest person. She was kind and generous and forgiving, and she actually had all this space and gave it to you. What if that is true? What would happen?
Then that would mean that it was all my fault.
And how does that feel? I'm intentionally bringing this up. This isn't an accidental question.
I guess it would make me feel like I should not have been her daughter. Like I should have
Pause.
not been there.
Hold on. That's let's try it again. Because you were on the right answer, right? You were, not that there's a right and wrong answer, but you were being really truthful with me, and then it stopped. You want to back up? You said, then it would be all my fault.
Yeah.
Was that intentional?
That would mean that I interpreted everything wrong.
And was it intentional?
No.
Mm-mm. You didn't have the faculties, the awareness, the development, the maturity to see the truth. You didn't. So all you had to go off of was your assumptions from your vantage point. You did the best job you could. So let's just think about that for a second. Maybe she was the sweetest, the kindest, the most lovingest. She was gracious. You just didn't see it. She supported you. She tried to help you. She was doing what you wanted her to do. You know? Help me lose weight, Mom. I can't eat this anymore. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
So what if in fact she was the right mom for you?
I don't know what to say that.
Well, you just have to let it come up. You did it again. I'm trying to go through it again. Then your first answer was, well, then I'm all at fault.
And she's not to blame for my...
And what does that mean for you?
That I'm responsible for it.
And what does that mean for you?
That means that she's not the problem.
Sounds like good news, doesn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's good news. Why would that be good news for you? I'm responsible. She's not to blame. I'm responsible.
Well, then I can do something about it.
You got it! Bravo! Now we begin the process of forgiveness. Is it really about forgiving her? Who are we forgiving here?
Me.
Yeah. You did the best you could. You really did. You really have. You had no freaking clue. You had no voice either. You had no relative awareness, right? Relative meaning you had no comparisons. You had no sibling to be like, call you on your own bullshit. You know, your mom clearly didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe she really, she let you be. She knew she couldn't do anything because you were, and her. She just, who knows? But if you take responsibility for it, you say, well, my perspective may have been unaware, not like you were aware, you were unaware. Maybe your perception, whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. But if let's just say you're all at fault here. Now we can resolve this. It's either that or you got to find a way to forgive her, and clearly your mind isn't running that direction. Right?
Yeah, it was just...
You want me to ask the questions again?
Yeah.
Okay, I knew it. I could just tell you're like, oh my God, what the fuck? What if your mother was the perfect mom? You just didn't see it. You had no clue. She did everything the way she was supposed to. She was supportive. She loved you. She just didn't want to participate in the drama. Right? So she backed out of the drama. Maybe that was it. Maybe she was the sweetest person. What would that mean if the truth is, because that's what you said, everybody around her, she was the kindest, the sweetest, the gracious, loving, giving, kind, easy, all that. Wasn't fake. She wasn't pretentious. Maybe all your feelings about her were nowhere close to truth. Her feeling. What I mean by that is your feelings, your assumptions about how she felt about you might have been a total lie. Right? You didn't know it, but you just didn't question your own thoughts about it. You thought she hated you. Well, what if that's not true?
She didn't hate me, but she was...
Well, would you say you were her biggest attacker?
Probably.
Okay. So what do you expect?
Yeah.
Right? So she's going to distance herself. And then you're going to, then you go through, I'm such a bitch, right? I felt inadequate. I felt like a shitty daughter. You had a lot of shame and guilt. Sounds like you were really, really kind of held hostage to your own drama. Maybe her removal to you felt like abandonment. I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to help you process things a little differently than you have been so that you can move forward and forgive yourself. Because either way, you're going to have to forgive yourself because you didn't know any different. There was no alternative. And if there was, would you have even been open to it?
Who knows?
Right? Probably not. You're struggling to be open to it now. What makes you think you would have been open to it when you were then? Right?
Yeah.
I know. And now you're living in kind of your own little misery, and you still, to some degree, would you say you're still kind of functioning in that kind of what's the word? Kind of living the same story, even though she's gone. You're just doing it with yourself now. And it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when do you let it go? When do you go, okay, I'm done with this shit. It's not working. It didn't work with this life. It hasn't worked up to this point. I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't need to carry the same goddamn story.
Yeah.
And you let it go because it has not served you very well. I had my niece live with me, and this is just kind of like similar. It's not the same. Obviously, you have your own kind of experience with this in your life and with your mom and how this kind of played out. But my my sister and brother-in-law got divorced, and it was kind of a nasty divorce. And my niece was not doing well. She was 12. She was already taking drugs and LSD, and she was exploring sexually. And my sister Debbie she just couldn't do it. She was just like, she won't listen to me. She's defiant. She's angry. She's super smart, manipulative. Anyway, so I was like, I'll take her. And I did. And her and I have a very good relationship. She's obviously in her 20s now and whatnot. But at the time, she really, really had a horrible relationship with her father. And I was just trying to talk to her about it. Like, what's going on? Like, because it was nasty. And I was like, did he molest you or something? And it kind of shook her up that I asked her that. Because she was so angry and so she hated her father, loathed him. And I was like, well, this type of like emotional feeling is like, you must have been severely abused emotionally. And she was like, no. All of a sudden she had some clarity around like how she was angry and reality. Because her emotional position with her father did not match reality. She wouldn't have seen it until, obviously I do the work I do, and I was doing it with her. She didn't even know it, right? And I was like, so is this how you want to relate to? What does it do for you to be this angry at your father? You hate him. I hate him. It's like, well, what is the problem? Well, she kind of took a position or a side against him because it, for some reason, felt gratifying. She was getting some type of gratifying. It felt good to hate him because of how she felt about the divorce. It was like a way for her to express, I think, her feelings of sadness was to be angry and defiant and to blame him. Even though he's never been harmful to her, always very loving, gentle. He might have been religious and she didn't like that, but it served her as far as coping from her sadness and grief of the divorce to be angry at him and to position him as a bad person in her mind. And it felt good to her to do it. And when he was around, she wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't look him in the face. And there was no reason at all. But in her mind, she had created this demonizing of him. Treated him that way. You know, I don't know how common that coping mechanism is, but and I'm not saying that your mother wasn't a terrible person, because maybe she was. I don't know, but how much of this is your positioning in your mind to cope from a divorce and moving and feeling, insecure with your weight and her wanting to, and it might have been some coping mechanism that you took on and you're still in it and you're still positioned that way to be, defiant. And I hear that a lot, and I know you've talked about it a lot. It's like my way of being, someone says something to be angry or to go and binge, and in a way it's a defiant move for you. I'm going to do what I want. You can't restrict me,
Yeah, I don't know.
Something to think about, right? Because if that is the case, let's just go there again. If that's the case, how do we resolve this? Maybe your story about it or your position about it isn't necessarily the truth. If it's not the truth, what does that mean for you?
It means I need to just relax. Yes, I don't know. I know that
I love that you connected with the relaxing part, by the way. That means I can relax. It does. You have no reason to continue to do what you're doing. Nothing. What's the point? Who is this serving? And who are you hurting,
Yeah.
You have to question what you get out of this, right? What are you getting out of it?
It's a way of, I know for one thing it appears to be a way of getting relief without having to worry about how other people are going to act or what they're going to do or how they're going to behave or dealing with the emotions that come from that. But it's also very lonely. I mean,
I was
just sitting in my house and with my cat, and I don't go anywhere.
No, it's very lonely. I have a feeling you've been feeling lonely since you were a child.
Yeah, it was just me and my mom, and I had my grandparents that she was always saying I don't want to bother anybody, so take me with me wherever she went. So I read a lot of books when I was a kid, because she would take me wherever we were going. I would sit in the car and I would read, or I would go wherever we were going and I would take a book.
Yeah, and you never really explored. You never really got to explore very much, did you?
No, I did get to go to camp. That was really fun.
Okay, that's cool. But other than that,
second year, but then when I hit puberty, I got acne and I got I got my father's acne, which my mother did not know how to deal with. It's really, really
painful. Mm-hmm.
Cystic acne, so just kind of became, like, I remember going to school and I would just be so quiet because I was hoping nobody would notice me. That's how I dealt with my acne, because it was so bad. And people would just, you know how kids are. And
well, everything I'm hearing is very much hide, shrink, don't, you really didn't get to explore. You didn't get very much of that. And so a downside of it is you don't really emotionally develop socially. Like, I know you're not socially underdeveloped. You and I are having a great conversation. You can handle that. But when it comes to vulnerability socially, your coping mechanism is to hide and to, right, deny, avoid.
Well, it's easy to do one-on-one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, in a group setting or any place where I feel like my weight is going to be, I'm going to be, judged negatively about, with my weight.
Okay. So when you feel judged negatively about your weight, what does that feel like?
Like I'm just sitting on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else is, like I'm not good enough to be in
the cool crowd. Yeah, it's like being shunned. It's so true. What you're describing, and we have to resolve that feeling. You have to, so knowing what you know now about your life, if you had to be the size forever, permanently, go through being a teenager all over again, would you so quickly isolate yourself? Knowing what you know now about how this has impacted you.
I don't know. That was one thing that I was really angry at my mom about, was because but she couldn't help me with that. Like, she couldn't help me I didn't know how to deal with, she was a counselor. She was supposed to be the person that could, and she would be the answer she would give me would be like,
no, most counselors don't. I'm sorry. They don't necessarily say you need to face your fears and then let people shame you. That's what my direction is going to be for you, but most people don't. They think you should cope. Try to lose weight then. They don't think you should face the fear. So your mom did the best she could, and now you're now talking to someone. Maybe your mother delivered me to you. I don't know. But you are now hearing what you needed to hear. You got to get to a place where you're not willing to let someone else's opinion dictate your life. You want to go out and play? You know what? I'm going to go out and play because this is my life to live. They cannot tell you can't play. What are they going to do? Box your soul out? You can't do that. But you let them with your fear. Yeah, but you don't need other people to play with you. You can play by yourself. You can explore. You can connect with other things. You can find someone else that's willing to play with you. There's lots of people out there. That one person may say, I don't want to play with her. She's too bad. But you know what? How many other people are out there that would be willing to play with you? You've got to be willing to be okay with that. There is an aspect here that has to be faced. And I don't even know if you really faced it. And we talked about this in our last session. Like, it's too scary. It feels too vulnerable. You have to be willing to sit in that fear and vulnerability if you want to change the way you're behaving. Because your first instinct is to run and hide. Go get some food. Because at least that tastes good. It's a distraction. It's like a totally different activity that takes me out from dealing with my insecurity, right? It's a deflection. It's like, total distraction. Well, at some point we have to face the fact that some people don't understand this. They don't understand. They're completely clueless when it comes to morbid obesity. They have no idea how this happens. And they stigmatize you. And you and I both know none of those stigmas are true. You're smart, you're educated, you're hardworking, you do care. You care too much, right?
Yeah.
You know, some of these things have to start to be faced. You have to face them. And when your fears come up, the goal is that you actually acknowledge them and you allow them to be there. And you talk about them and you breathe them in and you face them. What are you afraid of? You know, I'm afraid they're going to judge me. Okay, well, what would happen if they did judge you? Can you handle that? I want you to ask yourself that question. And then I got to go. I'm late for my next client now.
Okay.
You have to ask yourself, can I handle people judging me? Can I handle that? Knowing what I know now. Because what you've been living in is I can't handle it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what has happened not handling it. What would happen if you handled it? Meaning, I can face it. I can allow that to happen. I don't need to do anything. I can just allow it to happen. Then what? What would happen?
Well, I mean, I have explored both. I mean, I have tried to make my way into the world. And
yeah, I think you have, but you still have these underlying triggers that need to be, that are there. Of course.
Well, mostly it just means being able to. Okay. Well, you're late for your.
I know.
Okay.
I'm going to record this. I'll send it to you. I would go through the last session we did. You need to watch that one again. That one was so good. And then this one. This one's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of quiet time in our session, but this was good.